Gang Hang. Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Baum. I'm one of the hosts of the Two-Headed Nerd Comic Book Podcast. Joe Patrick is here, too, and I see his microphone is making noise, but I don't know if his mouth is making noise yet. Joe, are you there?
My mouth is making noise.
His mouth is making noises. That's good. Say hi to the kids, Joe.
Hi, kids. What's up?
We're talking about... We're going to get into some other stuff today. We do have a regular podcast you should check out. If you only hear this on YouTube, then, go check out our back issue show. Go check out our new comic show. But regardless of that.
I do have a segue, though, that's somewhat related.
Yes.
To DC, actually.
Okay.
So the former Harry Potter actor, Daniel Radcliffe, apparently is in the talk to be Clayface in the Clayface movie.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Well, and it has apparently been confirmed to be Basil Karlo.
Yes, that is confirmed, but it's not going to be what's his head, the director. It's not. I can't say his name.
Flanagan.
It's not Flanagan anymore. It's somebody else now.
It's not Mike Flanagan anymore.
No,
which is a little worrying for me. Actually, that's honestly the whole state of the DC studios. I should be honest with you. I'm a little worried about that.
That was part of the news of like the DC is not doing this or this is on the back burner. Like they couldn't get Flanagan because he's too busy.
Yeah,
I did hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean,
so I think I won a nerd bet kind of for that, but regardless.
Regarding the things going on the back burner, though, we talked about this on the Discord, and this is something James Gunn has said from the beginning. It's like if there's no script, there's no movement.
Right. No, and I think that's good.
And I agree with that for the most part. What I was going to say was that there are some, this will be all, I guess, proof in the pudding type of deal. But there is talk of what's the name of Zaslav, whatever that the jerk off was going to
David Zaslav.
Yeah, Zaslav.
Yeah, David Zaslav. There is some real rumor that based off of a few things, one of them started with the Joker movie or whatever, that they're kind of like pull the reins back on a lot of things. If you're not sure, that seems to be coming from a mandate from up above.
Yeah.
Hence why we're starting to see like them actually pulling the reins back on a lot of things. The other interesting thing I heard, and I don't know, again, this is too early to say. It didn't do well in audience test screenings of Superman. I'm not saying it's true enough.
Yeah.
But because we're all going to see this regardless. But the point is that based off of all of that, they're like, is this a sure bet? So there's a lot of studio, people with high pay grades who are starting to talk. Is this worth our money? Yeah. Is it? And they want to see how well Superman does.
Oh, of course.
Before they start going crazy.
Yeah, that's going to be the barometer.
And that's fair. Yeah. And so, Damon, like, I don't know that I agree that, it's possible that we read two different interpretations of the same news, but the way that the way it was characterized in the stories that I read, it wasn't that it was received poorly. It's that they did audience screenings, and as a result of the audience screenings, they got feedback and decided to make these small additions and tweaks.
Yeah, I definitely read something different. I heard worst movie ever, fart noises, people threw feces at the screen.
That depends. I look at the middle whenever I hear stuff like that. Like
I'm kidding. I did not hear anything like that.
Gunn also said that it's like these are not sweeping changes. This is like quality of life improvements, like see a shot here and a shot there to help transitions flow better, and like, oh, it would have been nice if I added a close up of that actor's face in this scene, that sort of thing. But nothing that substantially changes what the movie is going to be or what it's about. So I guess, again, we will see.
Yeah, they're not bringing in another actor to fill in a whole chunk of the story. Like
they're not adding like Giancarlo Esposito.
Exactly.
Like right now, right. At this very moment, they're filming scenes with it. No. But one thing I will say though is, with I guess with Superman and all that, the way it is, we're gonna have to wait and see. But let's not forget about back in the day. I remember this. When Batman v Superman came out, apparently the executives, like, they had a standing, when they did, the pre-screening, whatever, they had a freaking standing ovation for Batman v Superman. So they thought, oh yeah, this is going to make the most money.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then,
when I hear that Gunn has held screenings of the movie, I never once thought for a second that he was showing it to executives.
No.
I think he probably showed it to his filmmaker friends.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like producer first look or
and they were
shit.
like, oh, you should consider this. Should consider that. Or this scene doesn't quite work because of the pacing or whatever.
Right. They didn't bring in a test audience for this yet and be like, now please don't say anything on the internet.
Like muggles, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so Brian makes a point in the chat. I find any viewer news is dubious because the pro Gunn and pro Snyder camps are so polarized. Which is true. And so I think that also applies to the slant of whatever outlet is reporting it.
Well, but we learned that Snyder and Gunn are bros again. We saw that picture, and like he tweeted, "We're bros."
I mean, look, I think it's
and Gunn's bringing the whole.
I don't see anything wrong with them being pleasant to one another.
No,
wrong.
Gunn is bringing the entire Snyderverse back, Joe. It's out there. It's already out there. They're bros.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But I mean, and I'm not talking like conspiracy shit or Comicsgate stuff like Cosmic Book News or whatever. I mean, like, if the writer of a piece working for CBR or comicbook.com or whatever happens to be a bigger fan of one or the other, that article's probably going to read a little different. And
sure.
Yeah, because like Brian is right, is that there's people have taken sides like it's Republicans and Democrats, or and it's just like, you guys, Zack Snyder's probably a really cool dude. And
I don't think he's a really cool dude. I don't think he is. I think he is kind of an egotistical prick, and I think James Gunn is just throwing it all. I
think by all accounts, Zack Snyder is a decent man, and he's not a great filmmaker, in my opinion. And so when
I think he just has bad taste.
I think he has bad taste.
Exactly right.
Which doesn't make him a bad person.
No, I think he is.
And I don't know that I agree that he's an egotistical prick. Even I'm not sure what the evidence is of that. But
I think if it's kind of like the thing about only a sociopath would want to be president. Like, I think,
right.
Like, you're a blockbuster film director. Like, you don't have an ego. Of course they do. They're all egotistical.
Well, sure. No, of course.
And he did whip up an entire fake internet presence to back his movies. He got a PR firm to do that.
He was already out, right? He was already out. And then he saw this wave of these mouth-breathing basement dwellers and was like, hey, why not? It got him more work, right? He got a bunch of money from Netflix.
Yeah.
Nothing good came from it, but he gets paid. Like, he doesn't care. It's show business. Like, he's going to ride the wave. Now, unfortunately, there's some of the worst people around, but
right.
And, I don't know. You take your shot and the world was in lockdown, and he's like, why not? Please give me more money and I can release this movie my Justice League movie that's like 4 hours long.
Sure.
And it took me 3 days to watch. It was fine. It was better than the first one. Like, it was, a more cohesive story.
It did not need to be 4 hours.
It did not need to be 4 hours. I agree. Jesus.
It's one thing to kind of use your fan base to kind of help lift up your own, strengthen your own signal. But I don't think Zack Snyder had anything had any hand in
he did
whipping up a
he 100% did, and he used it, and he got busted for using.
He did not say to send death threats to people.
I'm not saying he said to say to do that.
Zack Snyder is not encouraging these people.
I'm not saying he said to do that, but he's also not an idiot, and he knew what was going on, and he did use them, and he knew how toxic this fandom was. He's not completely without blame for a lot of that.
Yeah.
He just isn't.
I mean,
it's
and that might be true, but
I
mean, then anybody that tries to get the Star Wars fandom excited about anything Star Wars should also
I think Star Wars is just inherently fucked. I don't think
there's Star Wars fandom. No offense to anybody in this room, but by and large, Star Wars fandom is the most toxic thing
but that's
on the internet.
I think they're just inherently screwed. No matter what you do, you're like, look how cute the kid is in the Skeleton Crew. They're like, well, he's not white enough, or he's not black enough, or he's too gay. Oh Jesus. God, you guys.
But I mean, I don't what's Snyder supposed to do if those are his fans, and I get it, but he's not gonna be like, I don't want you guys watching my movie.
I'm not saying he's going to be like that.
That shit's never going to happen.
Well, Joe, what are Harry Potter fans to do?
Harry Potter fans can make a choice with their financial dollars.
Sure, and Zack Snyder can make a choice as well.
Like Max is going to make that shit regardless because there's money in it.
Snyder went on to finally make that movie where the zombie gives birth on screen, which they wouldn't let him do in Evil Dead because they were like, that is not part of the story. No, but hey, you know, I mean, like whatever. I mean, he's allowed to do whatever he wants, and I don't want to.
I mean, but also Zack Snyder is not a studio. Zack Snyder is a filmmaker. Sure. Like the studio is the one still bankrolling this shit.
Sure. I'm just saying, if we had a bunch of THN fans that were super toxic and whipping up gnarly shit, I wouldn't be like, go get them, boys. You know,
but we also don't make any money.
Yeah, that's just me. So
I like to think that our better angels would prevail, Matt, but we're also not making billions of dollars.
I would hope so.
I'm just an alternate universe.
Matt, should we stop, sending death threats to iFanboy in your name? Because I need to go to the post office if that's true.
Yeah, we run rampant on all these forms, man. We're crazy.
No, you guys were not supposed to bring up that I had any part of that. Remember, you got paid to keep your mouth shut, and now I have.
You've
to
never
sue
denounced
you
it. You're just
now I have.
Yeah, exactly. You're complicit because you never said it was bad. Said it was a bad thing. Yeah.
All right, let's keep moving here. We wanted to talk about X-Men. We wanted to talk about like Brevoort and some things he said this week. We're a year in to our
all right. Hold on. Let me call it up, and we'll get into it.
Yeah, but we're basically 12 issues in
the THN Forum channel
to X-Men and Uncanny X-Men. We have news that 3 books are canceled: X-Force, NYX, and what was the other one? What was the third one? Oh,
Exceptional X-Men.
No, not Exceptional X-Men. It was X-Force.
X Factor.
Yeah,
that's done.
They're canceled. There's rumors that there's 3 more also on the chopping block. Brevoort, he didn't say anything that I thought was really controversial.
No, here, let me set it up. So Anthony D, shout out to Anthony D. Is Anthony here? I looked away from the chat.
I don't think he's here. No.
All right. Anthony says, this is Tom Brevoort's answer to a question from his Substack. For those of you listening that are tired of hearing us talk in code, Tom Brevoort is the editor of the X-Men family of titles at Marvel Comics. The question is this. Over the past few weeks, I've been building my Lego X Mansion. It's occurred to me along the way that it represents the version of the X-Men that has the most mainstream recognition from the cartoon, other licensed products, etc. What was the thinking, therefore, behind not going with as close as possible an approximation to this version in terms of team composition, costumes, the mansion setting, etc., for the big relaunch this past year? So, in other words, why isn't the X-Men the way everybody loved and remembered it?
Yeah.
To which
from 30 years ago.
From 30 years ago.
30 years ago, right?
Well, and then again from 60 years ago.
The show is called X-Men 97, you guys.
Right.
So, all right. Tom's answer, X-Men 97 and that Lego X Mansion is based on the X-Men of a particular era. An era that fans were very vocally afraid that things would be shifting back to when the progressive Krakoa era had run its course. But the purpose of Marvel publishing is to be out in front, the tip of the spear, generating new ideas and new stories that can serve as creative fodder for eventual film, animation, etc. So trying to revert things to 1990... My screenscape. Trying to revert things to 1992 or whenever would seem to be defeating the purpose in a major way. Better, I think, to try to develop new status quos that future X-Men projects in film and television can draw from. So Anthony's response to that was he found it disconcerting. He took from Brevoort's opinion that the only purpose of Marvel Comics is to generate ideas as creative fodder, which, to be fair, is the term that Brevoort used.
Well, sure, but also, like, they're not making their money on friggin' comic books, you guys.
Like, no, it's true. But I mean, look, we're all adults here.
Yeah.
None of us are children. But somewhere in there, you want to hope, and as Anthony does state, that they're in it to make the best story in the current moment. it's instead of just looking forward to what can be mined from it. And is it possible then that there are creatives out there that are having their ideas rejected because they can't possibly be used in movies and TV and video games and
Probably.
stuff?
Yeah.
It's kind of depressing if you focus on that part of it. And I agree. But my response real quick, and then everybody can give their own input on this. I think that Brevoort is a tactless man. He does not he should not have used the phrase creative fodder, first of all, but he is right. Everyone that heard the news that Krakoa was ending was really worried that they were just going to go back to Westchester and the mansion and the danger room and all the stuff.
Not everyone. There was a vocal majority, maybe, but not everyone.
A vocal majority that's allowed. That's a big chunk of people were like, they're just going to revert it back to the way everything was, and that is a valid. And Krakoa had so many fresh ideas. Not everybody loved them, but at the very least, they tried something new. And the idea of just hitting the reset button and going back to a version that sold lunchboxes and shit.
We talked about it here. We were like, I think they're going to just reset everything.
And I briefly touched on a point that Skelenaut said. The reality of corporate comics that we often forget, or we choose to forget, is that they exist to generate profit, not art, no matter how much we want to think otherwise.
Of course.
And it's the individual artists that you hope are able to mine some gems from within that situation. Like Stan Lee used to talk about the illusion of change because they thought the audience was going to turn over every so often. Kids would grow out of them and new kids would replace them. Haha, surprise. Kids never grew out of comics.
Right.
And now they're old men. And so like, what are we supposed to do with that? And now they're all billion-dollar franchises. And so what are we supposed to do with that?
Well, sure.
When Matt and I, when we were growing up, 1 out of 10 people could tell you who Peter Parker was or who Tony Stark was. And now everybody can.
But I mean, like, look, Brevoort didn't say anything wrong or incorrect, or
he was just not very gentle about it.
He just wasn't lying. This is the truth of it. These are the meetings that he's in. This is what he does. Ian, I see you speaking up.
Well, I was going to say, I think this is only offensive to people who don't understand the business end of how creative stuff is made.
Agreed.
Right.
It's like, oh my, you're telling me that like they just don't come from these pure artistic visions. There's commerce involved. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like there's nowhere else to do this besides the indie market.
Right.
And even that, you still have to have those same, like, I still have to make stuff that's in some way like tangible for people to want to read. You know what I mean?
People will want to buy.
Yeah.
It's not, and I mean, obviously, like how much of a factor that is depends on the kind of project, the scope, the budget, or whatever. But it's always a concern. I think the people getting upset about this are just people who haven't considered it before.
I kind of agree.
Well, I think that we kind of have this mythology built up in our minds about the bullpen and, these guys churning out pure art. When if you ask anybody that has studied it at all, have a conversation with Jason Sachs about it sometime.
Yeah, definitely.
These golden age creators that created these concepts that have lasted 80 plus years, these guys took jobs. For most of them, like the idea of drawing, let's say Green Lantern, the Golden Age Green Lantern, inventing that, or the Submariner or Superman, was just an easy a choice to take as it was getting a job drawing mechanical instructional manuals for the Army, like Jack Kirby used to do, or Will Eisner used to do.
Brian, your hand is up, and you're waiting patiently.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to talk over anyone.
No,
please. I think I don't have. I mean, he's absolutely telling the truth, but I think the context of what books they've chosen to put out makes it even more confusing.
That's the issue.
That's my issue.
Yes.
They're going to do things that they think are best for the books and for the characters and future IP, and they're like, here's a, I don't know, 40 out of 10 out of 100 X-Force book that Jeffrey Thorne in his comments being like, I can't believe this book is getting canceled, where everyone's like, it's the most bland looking thing on the shelves.
Yeah.
Like there's an idea there's a nugget of an interesting idea, but like all the costumes are so boring and the characters are boring. Like it doesn't work. And like, so Brevoort, that was the first one they announced other than the main books, right? Like that was second or third after the X-Men and Uncanny. And it's like, really? And then like we get X Factor, which is basically a watered down Ecstatics.
Yeah.
Which is a book that is that kind. I mean, Ecstatics and X-Force with Milligan and Allred was that IP that succeeds in a really insane way because they're brilliant creators.
Right,
like they did it.
Russell is also a brilliant creator, and we love him. This is not his best stuff. It just isn't.
It's just it feels like a checklist.
Yeah.
And that's not. I don't know. There's as the books have gone on, like I think X-Men and Uncanny are better than they were at the beginning. I think they've kind of found their footing. A lot of that is who's the artist that month, which was kind of like David Marquez is like a brilliant, beautiful artist.
Yeah. And
when it's not him, it suffers a little bit. Any book that Brian Stegman's not drawing looks better, unfortunately.
Man, I cannot look at that sword that Psylocke carries anymore when he draws, because it looks like it's made of pink poop stacked up when he draws it.
It's like,
it is
it's
weird.
it's like cotton candy.
Yes,
It's absurd.
I hate it.
But the and like NYX didn't have the sales, but those are good writers that know how to. They've got something like they're that like the Outsiders book was not great, but they had an idea, and like it's almost there.
Fair.
Like they're all like and like NYX is like almost there. Like you get, it's kind of working, but everything is can't succeed. But there's the idea that they're just going to launch more and more books, and Brevoort said that from the beginning. Like we're flooding the market.
Oh yeah,
there's new number ones regularly,
Storm,
and it's like
Magic. Like everybody gets a book. Here we go.
And when you put that up against the guy who was like the retailer, and I posted what he said. It was transcribed by Bleeding Cool, but that Adam Freeman. He talks about what the industry needs to survive, and like an onslaught of new number ones is not it.
I know. I agree.
Like you need. His stuff, he's completely right. He's been doing this for 30 years and he knows what he's talking about, but like Brevoort should know better. And to say that we're going to flood the market with shit and hope that something catches because maybe they're going to make a movie out of it someday is like, dude, you don't know what you're doing.
But to be completely fair to Brevoort, that is exactly what his superiors want to hear in their internal meetings. You just don't go and drop that on the internet. You know what I mean? His bosses want to hear this. Yeah, we're throwing shit against the wall, see what sticks. And if it sticks, we're going to run with it. You don't just drop that on the internet as a quote, though.
Yeah, no, he took down the curtain and showed everybody. And now we just see all the parts and it's like, well, this isn't working.
Yeah.
And he's like, but how do you feel about Magic number 3? It's like, this book is canceled, man. Like,
yeah,
we're not going to, like, these are all books that are not going to make it to issue 12.
Sentinels,
so what are we doing?
Sentinels, for example. Like, come on. What are we doing?
I saw some pages, like some panels clipped, and I was like, that looks better than it looked at the beginning. And I went to read the new issue, and like, it looks as bad as it did in the first one. It's just not, I don't know. It's very, it looks like one of those Marvel scrolling comics that they were like, put it in a book.
Yeah.
There's just something amateurish about it and not a great way. And I don't know, they're trying everything and it's not working. And when you get down to, I understand they don't want to do the 1992 blue and gold thing again, but like when Joe Casey talks about when he and Grant Morrison were writing X-Men, how Grant did what Grant did Joe was like, I'm going to do all new stuff, new characters, new locations, new stuff. And Morrison chose to do the Shi'ar and clones and Sentinels and like, hated and feared and all that stuff. And he's like, yeah, Grant was right. Like you got to do it, but better than it was done before. And I didn't get it because I tried to break too much new ground. And it's like, take what worked, take the themes and make them better.
Agreed.
Rather than just doing anything. And I think go back to 1992 and look at what worked out of the Claremont era. Like not the literal, like they take the wrong point. Like, oh, we have to write like that. It's like, no, you don't have to write like that, but you need to get
more movies about boats.
Right. Exactly.
More movies about, yeah, exactly. Like, oh, we need more text boxes on the page. It's like, no, it's not the script.
But that's what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like
themes.
Brevoort is saying. Like, well, that's too dangerous. Just doing the exact same thing. And no one is saying do the exact same thing. And
well, that's why I think he's missing it, and he's also telling his current truth, but missing the point, which is like deadly. Because then nobody gets anything that they want.
And not
and to like not as a defense, but like just to sort of point out Brevoort's situation in this whole matter. His job is not to be creative. His job is to make sure the books sell.
Right. You want to hear
and there is a creative element to it, but that's not his priority.
No, but he is overseeing this and steering it, and his name is on it. And I'm not trying to sound like old guy who's just roll it back, right? But I will say the most excited I've been about any X-Men book was this Joe Casey and Crisscross book that came out 2 weeks ago.
Weapon X-Men.
That was the cheesiest, most 90s thing.
It was so rad.
But it was
so great.
It was fun. It was just fun.
Yeah,
and I'm not having fun reading pissed off, introspective Cyclops who's once again a terrorist in Alaska and like spends an entire issue threatening a guy face to face. In issue 11, the sum up of the Grey Malkin bullshit, prison, which is like, okay, we're not going back to the X-Mansion. We're not going to roll it back 30 years, but we will just do another Orcus with this one stuff. And, they're terrorists. It's like you are doing that. You're just playing it safe because you saw it sort of work and you liked that part of Krakoa, maybe. I don't know. But this doesn't feel
like you replaced Orcus with something that's like Orcus but less interesting.
Right. And how many times have we done that? Like this is all we're doing with the X-Men. I get it. They're hated, they're feared. That makes sense. And coming out of Krakoa, they should be even scarier. They should. But there's nothing new here. You're not spinning some new IP or setting them up for a new movie. Like, can you imagine if the MCU was like, yeah, there's a team of them in Louisiana and another team in Australia. Like, what are we doing? Right?
If they had wanted to do something truly interesting coming out of Krakoa that kind of went back to the X-Men's roots as superheroes, even outcasts in a certain light. At the end of the Krakoa stuff, when it was revealed that, this organization that we've actually gotten behind as a population and as a government is secretly trying to murder humanity in favor of artificial intelligence from the future.
Well, and the whole world did, right? It wasn't just the United States.
Yeah, right, exactly.
The whole friggin' world did. So I would think Dr. Doom would have something to say about this right now.
Right.
You're running the world.
But then the world sees the mutants rise up and save all of humanity from people that they thought were there to help. And then the X-Men become revered, which makes them outcasts in a sort of different way. And we could have gone from Krakoa into this era where it's like, how do the X-Men react when people treat them like they're the Avengers?
Yeah.
where like world powers are asking for their help.
Right. Like I can't remember who it was on the run where they were living on the island off of San Francisco.
Children cheer when they show up.
Remember, like they were living on an island off the coast of San Francisco, and like the population of California was like, "Fuck yeah, X-Men. We love you guys."
The people in San Diego,
right?
Yeah, or San Francisco, right?
Yeah,
wherever it was.
And like the mayor was backing them and stuff like that. And it was they were like,
right.
This is odd, but you also had the rest of the world that was kind of like. We still, or a large chunk of the United States. It was like I still
because at the same time this stuff was going on, Norman Osborn was in charge of national security and forming his own team of supervillain hit squads.
And you had a lot of people that voted for Norman Osborn who were like, I don't know if I feel good about this vote anymore.
Oh man, gosh, if only there was some way to make this look like the world outside our window, just like Stan and Jack always wanted.
Right, and I think they're. So I think they're doing that with this One Nation Under Doom pretty well. And maybe it's just a different writer who's like, yeah, I've got an idea for this, and this is going to play really well in our current, situation. But the X-Men, they're supposed to be the boots on the ground. We're dealing with racism. We're dealing, with sexual identity and like personal identity politics. And now we're just back to I'm a terrorist that's fighting an evil organization, and I don't know. Even
you know what?
Simone's
If they want to do that, okay, sure. But then I want the people to react the way that young people or people of a particular moral and political bent react to protesters or Antifa.
Sure.
People that fight cops in the streets because they're tear gassing children. And, sure. So where are the people in the Marvel universe that are like supporting the X-Men because they are the mutant version of Antifa?
Sure. But okay. Like, and I will admit, look, it's hard to reverse course on what you got going right now or change course even for writing the story. But you know what's not hard? You know what the easiest thing the X-Men can do? Make the books look good. They don't look very good right now across the board. And I'm not trying to bash artists. These are artists that are perfectly fine at what they do.
I mean, you just said that the books don't look good. So
but what I'm saying is
supposed to take that.
X-Men is famous for being the slickest, sexiest looking book on the market. And Stegman is not delivering that. And the guy that's
Uncanny X-Men is gorgeous again, but only when Marquez draws it.
Right. And the fill-ins are not.
And X-Men just looks fucking weird.
And even the fill-ins on X-Men, it's not great. It's just not great. Brian, I saw you come off mute, and I know you have feelings about this.
Oh, real quick before, the guy that filled in for Marquez on not this most recent issue of Uncanny X-Men, but the issue before that was terrible. Not just weird, awful.
It wasn't
like legit bad.
It wasn't good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's just an inconsistency of the whole line, and I don't know. I mean, I know that they were kind of Krakoa was such a swerve. Like they basically got off the usual highway and went off road and went 1,000 miles in a different direction. And it was always going to be, well, yeah, but then what? Like you have to come back at some point. Right. Like you have to. And they basically acted like they had to drive 10 feet back onto the road. Like they just like went back and were like, yeah, oh, everything is, don't worry about it. It's like, well, I don't know. Like this is a narrative, right? Like you want to have new ideas and you want to tell the stories that you can. So I don't know. I hope that there's new stuff. I think the Weapon X-Men is very stupid, but I'm totally on board.
It's stupid.
It's dumb as hell, but it's great.
Do you guys subscribe to his Substack, the Joe Casey? Because it's just all like X-Men nostalgia at this point. So he's covering his old stuff and how
hopefully
how the pitch went, how his X-Men run, his Uncanny run back in the day was.
From like Stacy X era?
Yeah, he goes through like multiple installments of like chunks of books and talks about them and like the origins and intention and all that. And because he's a kind of a zany, weird guy. And I've always loved his point of view. So it's
I never got that. I never got that impression reading his comic
Yeah, he
books.
seems so straight-laced.
And he's a zany weird guy.
No, listen, it's in the text. So he,
No, yes,
Yeah.
I'm kidding, of course. Yes.
no, it's a good read.
I think Joe Casey is a phenomenally talented writer that knows how to do exactly what you were talking about earlier, Brian, which is to look at what came before and utilize what worked and do it in a fun, fresh way. And, like for better or for worse, the dude's out there writing like Youngblood spin-off shit and things that people seem to like. I don't really care for it, but Matt loved it. And he's doing these weird little X-Men projects that I love because that's much more in my wheelhouse. And I think I'm glad that he's still around lending his voice because he reminds me of the thing, like the reason why, oh, you know what? I do kind of love Cable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I do love Cable,
and
no matter how much we make fun of him.
I haven't
I do
felt
love Cable.
anything for Cable in I don't know how many years. And I'm not saying like, again, it sounds like old guy wants to roll back to the old stuff. I get it. But there just hasn't been anything real interesting about that character. And honestly, Deadpool and Wolverine, look, I have not been thrilled. You say what you will about Ben Percy's Wolverine. He did some stuff, right? He pushed some boundaries. It got really ridiculous.
He did do some stuff. That is true.
It got totally ridiculous in the end, and just like stupid violent. But at the same time, like, hey, it was kind of different. But like Deadpool, we can't just keep putting him in a book with Wolverine and be like, look, they're doing it again.
Yeah.
They're doing it again. But
you know what? That's not him.
That's silly again.
That's Brevoort.
Of course.
That's marketing.
Yes, that's marketing.
I'd go so far as to say it's not even Brevoort. I think it's somebody above saying we need a book that matches the title of the movie.
Sure, for sure. 100%.
And someone was like, well, I guess Ben Percy is a good choice because he's written both characters. And they're like, okay, well, let's hire him.
They got him writing Red Hulk too, right out of the movies.
Hey, you know what? We're not going to touch on it on the show, so I'm going to tell you right now. The Red Hulk #1 was great.
Ben Percy's a good writer. He's written plenty of good
stuff. It was better than I thought it'd be.
His Ghost
it's not what you expect.
Ben Percy's the first person to write a good Ghost Rider book in what, 15, 20 years, maybe?
And then they made him put Wolverine in it and light his head on fire. Yeah. So
and now we're Wolverine.
It's just I think Ben Percy is kind of stuck in a place, and this is speculation, and I hate to do this because I don't like it when Matt does it.
You don't always have to say that. You can just say this is speculation.
I want them to know, Matt, that I hate it when you do it. I think that Ben Percy is in a spot right now where he is a writer that writes things people tend to like. And so they keep putting him on assignments that are maybe have more of a corporate hand to them. Like, why is the Red Hulk getting a solo book? If not because of this movie that people didn't really like.
Of course.
Why is there a Deadpool and Wolverine ongoing series? There's no reason for it. It left literally zero impression on me when I read it. It has no reason to exist other than it's a title that people recognize.
Sure. And people will buy because of the names on the cover. That's why.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think he keeps getting these assignments. But what I would really love is for Ben Percy to get a chance to do something that he's passionate about, because I know that he's a good writer.
For sure. And I think there's other Jed MacKay. Perfect example. Saladin Ahmed.
Jed MacKay. Right.
Perfect example. I love Jed MacKay's Moon Knight. It's fantastic. And I think MacKay is at his best when he is writing singular character stories, because I did not care about his Avengers, and his X-Men is just not doing it for me. I think he's
and that's the thing. It's not even singular character stories, because Moon Knight is a huge ensemble.
I mean, it is. They've built a family around him, but it's a Moon Knight.
But I think the difference is not that it's a team book or an ensemble. I think the difference is Jed MacKay got popular, and now they've got him writing marquee titles.
Yes. And I think
he's not delivering the work that we know he's capable of doing.
And I think it's the same with Saladin Ahmed. I think he's a very good writer. He's just not a Wolverine writer. It's not working. It's not
his
terrible.
Daredevil's not good either.
No, and his Daredevil's not great either. It's just like there's a business principle called the Peter principle, where you get hired and you do really well in your job and you get promoted, and you do really well there and you get promoted again. And eventually you get promoted out of your expertise to a job that you're not that good at, right? Because you were good at other jobs. And I feel like McKay and Ahmed are right there. They're,
because you've got an impressive Peter.
Yeah.
We get it.
Because your Peter looks really good. No, I'm just saying, they're great writers that I have really enjoyed that are both writing books that just aren't doing shit for me right now. They're not bad, but they're certainly not great. And this is not what they're good at.
So there is so the Peter principle, it's funny. Like, this reminds me of a video game called The Stanley Parable. And I don't know if it was an homage to the Peter principle, but The Stanley Parable, if you don't know, is a game that seems like it's going to be one thing, and then you immediately start breaking the game. Like, you venture off the map and you start doing things that the instructions are telling you not to do. And the whole while there's this voiceover. It's not Stephen Merchant, but it's a very similar, like, British sounding, funny guy. And he's like, no, what are you doing? You're supposed to be going this way. And that's the game. That's the Stanley Parable. And I wish these writers were able or empowered to do something more like that, where they take the mold and then break it.
Yeah.
Or color outside the lines or go outside the maze.
Absolutely.
Rather than the Peter principle, where they just get so good at their job that they don't get to do their job anymore.
Well, to bring it all back to what Brevoort said and that quote, you have to wonder if writers like Jed McKay and Ahmed, who are getting their shot and at something big, are being helped a bit or kept on the rails by editorial the same way we see directors that are assigned to MCU movies.
I think kept on the rails is probably a good way to describe it, rather than helped. But yeah.
Yeah, like Ona.
I think that there are more restraints on Jed McKay now that he has a higher profile assignment than there ever were on Moon Knight.
Because he's not Grant Morrison. Because he's not some of these bigger, where you can come in and be like, I'm going to do whatever I want. Or like, or even Chris Claremont, where they're like, sure, Chris, take whatever corner of the X-Men universe.
But no, but you're right.
Do whatever.
If oh gosh, who's a Grant Morrison equivalent that's not Neil Gaiman these days? But you know what I mean.
That's tough, right?
It's like I'm just gonna push all the Neil Gaiman of it aside for a second. But when he expressed interest in doing stuff at Marvel,
say Frank Miller decided he wanted to come back and
Frank
write.
Miller, Frank, yes, good. Frank
he wanted
Miller.
to come back and he wanted to write Daredevil again. Guess what?
Or
do whatever you want.
Yes, right, exactly. And they let him do it at DC.
Yeah.
Frank was like, I think I got another Dark Knight. I think I got another Dark Knight in me. And they were like, how about two? How about two more Dark Knights, Frank? And those went the way they went.
And he said, let me warm up my feet to draw this real quick.
Frank, are you interested in drawing covers for any of these comics? We'll pay you handsomely. And he's like, oh, yeah, how about Red Hulk #1?
One thing, you can't say no. Whatever I show up with, you cannot say no.
Well, it's like, some of them are fun, goofy looking in a fun way.
Sure.
Some of them are goofy looking in a bad way.
Some of them are saber-toothed with a pig nose. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, that Deadpool and Wolverine variant cover.
But the point being, I think these guys are kept on the rails and said, this is the direction, this is where we're going, you can do this. And they're like, can I do this? And they go, no. Play it safe.
Mark Waid would have been a good example.
Sure, Mark Waid. If he came back and said, Miller, I want to write X-Men, they'd be like, right on. But Mark Waid is a guy that we've seen in situations where we're like, well, I left. I wasn't able to do what I wanted to do, so I left. And I get that too. I just feel like there's a really heavy hand right now, and Brevoort is telling us this is the business, and this is how we are doing business right now. So that's why you may not feel great about some of this. We're playing it safe.
I just think it's maybe a bad idea for Marvel to let the guy that will frankly tell audiences that the realities of the situation,
right?
Rather than like sugarcoat it and make it sound all happy and nice and artistic and whatever.
Sure.
Maybe you just don't let Tom talk to the audience.
Right. This is why you put the
shut the fuck up.
I appreciate his frank honesty.
Well, but this is why you put the chef on the TV show, not the guy that slaughters the pig, right? You know, there's a business there. I mean, obviously.
It's just like look, if you don't want people to be mad about the things he's saying, don't let him engage with the audience.
Sure. I mean,
but he's not wrong. None of the things he said are wrong.
No. He could have answered a different question. That's true, Brian. He absolutely could have. All right, we talked about this a lot, and we got a few minutes left. The Razzies came out this week. And for those of you who don't know, the Razzies pick the worst movies in Hollywood that put out this year, and they give out awards, and they always come out right before the Oscars. The Razzies awarded Madam Web as Worst Picture.
Worst Picture, yeah.
My question for you is, did Kraven the Hunter get snubbed? Because I will come right out and I will say it. Kraven is a worse movie than Madam Web.
Matt, that is such a hot take that I don't know.
It is. It's worse.
Someone's gonna have to engage him on that. If anyone that's here that's seen both. But
I haven't seen either. But I think bringing up Madam Web again is like so desperate. Like,
sure,
move on, Razzies. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like,
but I mean, they're not wrong. You know, they're not wrong. It is definitely one of the worst films. This is their job, you know.
But like Megalopolis, right? Like that got, won some.
It was tight.
Award,
it was super tight. Megalopolis got a bunch of votes. It was very tight, and I think
Madam Web came out and accepted it.
Yeah,
but that had people who were like, no, you don't get it. It's really smart. Like there were people on, like there was a little bit of a discussion of the value and
oh yeah, the Coppola cult
good or not. But Madam Web, from like literally the first second, like the movie started and people were like, this movie sucks. Like there was no point where it's all been downhill. So then you're gonna dig it up and be like, this is the worst one. It's like,
yeah, it's
who cares? Like it's okay.
They're gonna try to morb it, and you can't morb Madam Web because there was nothing fun about Madam Web.
Yeah.
At least with Morbius, you can watch Morbius in a certain mindset and go, all right, yeah, I had a good time. While recognizing that it is terrible, you can be like, oh man, did you see that? That was so crazy and stupid. There's nothing like that in Madam Web. Madam Web is just bad.
Madam Web is
J, capital B.
Madam Web feels like an experiment gone wrong, an experiment in editing that just went completely wrong. And I would say
let AI do it.
Yeah,
just like AI edit this. Yeah,
absolutely.
I think it's an experiment in not bothering to edit at all.
No, it is so heavily edited.
I mean that's probably true.
So heavily edited that it destroyed.
I can't believe that Madam Web took the prize home, and Rebel Moon 2 is just right there.
Yeah, that's where I question it, Ian. Is like, I think that if you want to say worst comic book movie, okay, fine, debate it between Kraven and Madam Web. But do I think Madam Web is truly the worst movie that came out? No.
No, it's Joker 2.
There's no fucking way.
Joker 2 was right there too. Got a lot of votes. It was very close. But so I'm of two minds of this because it was a catastrophe, no question, and it was terrible. But Kraven was not heavily edited. It wasn't. They did what they wanted to do and told their story, and that story is pure garbage. Like, just pure garbage. Say what you will, but I didn't watch the Rebel Moon movies, and I heard they're bad. But I heard they're bad because, like, they're too long, and they borrow from a bunch of other shit. And it's just like, oh, you thought Star Wars was badass.
Sure, it's like Star Wars with swear words, right? And
right. And, like, just mediocre. Just absolutely mediocre and too long. Kraven was fucking garbage. Straight up garbage. Start to finish.
I mean, look, Matt and I watched when we had our do-over holiday party.
Yeah, Venom 3
in January. We watched Venom 3, even more Venoms, and like we were not even paying attention most of the time.
More is spelled M-O-A-R, by the way. Even more.
M-O-A-R. even more Venoms. Yeah, and we weren't. Venom. I'm sorry. It's called Venom 3 Horse Venom, or Venom Horse, depending on where you live.
There was a
regionally.
Venom Frog too, bro. Don't forget.
Oh, you're
And a
right.
Venom
there was
fish.
a Venom Frog, Matt.
There was a wild
Shit.
Venom kingdom.
You're right. I think that's why it's called Even More Venoms.
Yeah.
But we weren't even paying attention half the time, and we did not have any trouble like looking up from our conversation, taking 2 seconds and going, okay, well, we're back on track. This movie's fucking awful.
Well, but not just that.
Was it
Also,
as bad as Madam Web?
No, it was not as bad as Madam Web, but it was another movie where they definitely made this movie and they either said, oh shit, this movie is 58 minutes long. What do we do? How about we fart in a hippie family and give them way too much screen time?
Yeah, right.
And,
the hippie family.
And a fucking sing-along, which we've all been waiting for in a Venom movie. I've said, oh man, these Venom movies are great, but there's no sing-alongs. Like, can we please get an extended version of ground control to Major
Space Oddity? Yeah, right. And we're gonna get the guy from Notting Hill, the terrible roommate with bad teeth from Notting Hill to be the dad. And there's that whole hippie family subplot is just like. Venom 3 was like the Rocky 4 of comic book movies, and they were like, "Oh no!"
But even Rocky 4 just plugged in,
montages and music videos.
This was so obvious that
we're gonna have James Brown perform live in Russia while Carl Weathers dances in a flag,
right? But
in flag underwear.
This group of actors and their story was so obviously filmed later without anyone else except for Venom, who like interacts with them, so much so that like when shit's going down at the base, the main characters like Chiwetel Ejiofor is running around doing his thing, and then like the camera flashes over there, and the family's like, "Oh, Venom, save us! We're gonna fucking die!"
Right? Like
it's like they're not even in the same spot, but they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
But it was a way worse movie. Jesus. Like I agree. I think it's cowardly to give this to Madam Web because it's too easy.
It's too easy to give it. I think it's almost a meme to give it to Madam Web.
Yeah, it's too easy.
Yeah.
And there were movies that were way worse. And I don't know if Venom 3 was worse, but God, it was fucking garbage.
It's the most popular bad movie.
It's the most popular bad movie.
Everybody knows. It's the most memed bad movie.
Absolutely.
It's what gets a Razzie, right?
I think that's disrespectful to the art form of making shit movies. Like, someone... I mean, like, at least give Late Night with the Devil, like, an honorable mention or something.
Oh, I loved that. I thought it was great.
I know, I fucking hate that movie, and I like teasing people.
Oh, I really liked it. But, like, it was what it was. You're right. It was not by any means, like, high cinema or anything. It was just like, we're doing this one thing, and you probably know how it's going to end. Here we go.
It's just like, I think that there's bad movies. There's movies that are bad, like Venom 3, or even Kraven the Hunter, which at the very least had Aaron Taylor Johnson doing his terrible Russian accent.
Oh, God.
Looking all hot with his half sleeveless vest with no shirt underneath. Tom Hardy is in the Venom movies, chewing up the scenery left and right. Madam Web had nothing to redeem it.
Yeah, zero personality.
It had zero personality. Even though it had actors in it that I like, they didn't do anything worth noting.
Ian.
I know we have to go, but here's what I'll say, like, in terms of, like, the worst movie. When I was much younger, I wrote an article for, like, the local hit paper or whatever, and it was, like, sequels that killed franchises, right? Like, you can make a movie so bad that it just terminates the franchise.
Sure.
Like Caddyshack 2.
Yeah.
Or Return to Oz, or Blues Brothers 2000.
Yeah.
Right? And I think when it comes to bad movies, it's like what you really need to pay attention is not the movie that everybody hemmed and hawed about being bad, but like Netflix went in for hundreds of millions of dollars on Zack Snyder to do an R-rated space opera like Star Wars, and like gave him a directorial cut before the first movie was even out, right? And all of this stuff, and like that has all disappeared.
Yeah.
It is all gone. There's never going to be another one. You're never going to hear anything about this fucking franchise again. That's why it's the worst movie of the year.
I don't disagree.
Because it has almost erased itself from the internet.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And I think Netflix is exceptional at cleaning up their own shit. whether it's Mark Miller's projects or, Zack Snyder's projects. When something doesn't work, they just go, oh, no problem. Garbage.
Never existed.
Next up. Yeah. Like, what do we got next?
Yeah, it's like, hey, you guys remember that they made 3 seasons of a Lock and Key TV show? Neither do I.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, not only are you not going to put it in your suggested, you're going to have to type out like 17 characters to get it.
You're going to have to do Rebel, Space, and M and O before you get any of it.
You might have to search ZACK as well. Because they've got it so buried in, in the algorithm.
Did you mean Zac Efron? No, I meant Zack Snyder.
That's not even how you spell Zac Efron.
Well, here's
what do you mean?
Zac Efron.
I don't know. I just figured you wanted to watch something good.
Here's some Nora Ephron stuff while we're at it too. You might, let's just play it safe.
Oh, that's funny.
All right.
It's funny.
Good times today, guys. We will be back with show.
Boy, all we did was complain.
This week and next week.
When we do that. At least we laughed while we did it.
I don't think all we did was complain. I think we talked through some stuff and explained why.
No, we made fun of some
stuff.
People's hard work and then shit on it.
Sure, I mean, some of it, yeah. But look. You got a job to do, people. You got a job to do, Mr. Snyder. You got a job to do, really. Marvel. You got a job to do, Tom. Do the job. That's all we're asking.
I'm not. Brian.
Let's end on a high note. Matt Fraction on Batman.
Brian, please.
Matt Fraction on Batman.
Yeah. Matt Fraction.
There's no one left, so it's Matt Fraction's turn.
So, okay, let me back up real quick.
You're not wrong.
I posted this in the Discord, and it's my own fault for making a dumb joke. DC put out a trailer for Hush 2. And I said, I put trailer in quotes because it's basically it's animated panels from Jim Lee. Right. And then Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb slow motion walking into frame. I would, in my mind's eye, like things were exploding behind them. There weren't, but it was like the most unearned drama of anything I've ever seen. And I said, hey, you guys, check out this whack trailer for Hatoosh because they put the 2 where the U is instead of where the S is.
Yep.
But anyway, after Hush 2, which starts in the next issue of Batman, the new ongoing writer will be Matt Fraction.
And that's a name.
How exciting.
That is a name that I think they could, come to the X-Men, Matt Fraction. Do whatever you want. Please, Matt Fraction.
He did. He took them to San Francisco.
I know.
And we really liked it.
Do it again. I'm not saying the same thing, but Brian, Matt Fraction on Batman? You're excited.
Well, I mean, it's when they announced, I wouldn't have ever thought that he'd be interested in that.
Yeah.
But him and Jorge Jimenez. Jimenez is looking, I think, for the longest interrupted run in Batman history, but next to Jim Aparo, but he's trying. I think that's a great artist, and I hope that Fraction brings his sensibilities, because he's just such a thoughtful and succinct writer, but he can also do big action stuff. Yep. So just look at Hawkeye, he's got those things. And I hope he does at least a year. I don't know. We'll see how long this goes.
So to kind of tie it back to what we were talking about with the X-Men, something that I think DC is doing really well right now is looking at what worked in the past and trying to do something new and good and fun with it. And a lot of the all-in titles have that feel of runs that we loved. Like Doomsday is running around in Superman right now, but it's not like any Doomsday story you've ever read, and the Green Lantern titles with Hal and John and Guy and but the books are good. They're not treading old ground. They're good.
That's the mission statement of all though, right? I mean,
getting Matt Fraction to come to a book that he has already admitted to saying is just this is just going to be this is Batman as a superhero. We're going to have a new Batmobile. The costume is slightly different. The fucking utility belt is bonkers. It's got so much shit hanging off of it, you guys. it's probably a nightmare to draw.
He also gets
but
to
it
tell.
looks amazing.
He gets to tell whatever story he wants too. It doesn't sound like this is going to like heavily rely on continuity. It's going to be like my Batman stories. Go.
Well, but it's also not like Batman brooding and being mad at his family because they make some very cogent points about his behavior.
Sure.
It's like, no, it's Batman fighting Clayface and
I hope they stick with that. That's what the Zdarsky's like the what's it called? Fail point, whatever.
Fail safe.
That initial arc, which was before it went to that alternate dimension and all that crap. But it was Bruce and Tim as Robin, and they go to a dinner party and they were in the costumes, and it felt like, okay, this is what I want. And then I went in this other direction. So I'm hoping they can kind of get back to the basic thing, pick a good Robin and go for, I hope it's Tim, and go forward with it. And, and to what you were saying, Joe, like Green Arrow is with Chris Condon and Montez, like, it's fantastic, and it feels like the Denny O'Neil.
It's great,
Mike Grell,
Denny Cowan question. Like it's that kind of like Mike Grell, old school '70s gross Saturday afternoon gritty crime book, and it's about pollution and corporations and his costume and figuring stuff out, and it's just. It's a fun thing, and I'm glad that they're letting them do that.
It's also not retreading anything, though. They're not just doing it again.
It feels familiar without feeling like a carbon copy.
Right.
And I think that's what else you got to do that with characters that are 80 years old. Like
that's the mission, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then on the opposite end of the spectrum from that is a book like Metamorpho, where there is no like beloved defining text for Metamorpho. It doesn't exist. And so what they've done is hire Al Ewing to make it the most absurdly mod fever dream of a psychedelic, 60s throwback that you can imagine Al Ewing writing.
It's fun as hell.
About a guy that can turn into nitrogen and iron and methane and shit.
And it's just
he
fun.
draws better eye rolls than Steve Lieber,
It's a great combination. So good. It's so good.
All right. I got to get going. We're over time. This is great. Frank, I want to talk to you about Star Trek Section 31 in our Nerd TV forum, because I read the one shot that leads into it from IDW this week, and it's really good. And the reviews for the show are really bad.
It's a movie. It was going to be a show, but it's just a movie. It's just a 2-hour movie.
Oh, it's just. I thought it was a miniseries.
Yeah. The problem is it was supposed to be a show.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they went from 10 episodes to a movie.
Ugh.
And you could see how it's disjointed.
Well, a funny thing happened. A funny thing happened on the way to Section 31.
Yeah.
Michelle Yeoh won an Oscar.
Yeah, that's kind of derailed it.
Yeah.
So,
I think I mentioned that when she won that Oscar, and people were like, no, she'll still do Star Trek.
For better or for worse.
Yeah, sure she will.
She doesn't really have time.
Well, Frank, let's take it to Nerd TV and let's talk about it there, because I want to hear your feelings, and I'm gonna probably watch it later tonight, and I'm not.
It's worth watching. I mean, it's fine.
All right, we'll talk about it. I got to get out of here though. So,
all right,
good times. Thanks everybody. It's Two-Headed Nerd signing off.
Later.